Second event as a new team, and we would like to first thank to our partners. We would like to say thank you to Helvetiq, for represented here by Richard Harvell. Helvetiq is an international publishing house founded by Hadi Barkat in Basel and Lausanne. In Basel is since 2015. We would like to say thank you to Out and About, which is an association which supports artists and creative professionals on their career paths. We have Ina here today, and please feel connect with her and ask about it. It's very interesting. Next, we would like to say thank you to Stellwerk, and thanks to Out and About, we have this room today. So Stellwerk is a place of work and exchange for cultural and creative professionals, and this is perfect place for us. So now we're moving to partners in our breakfast. Big thank to Cult Bakery for exquisite breakfast. Many thanks for sustainable coffee to Coffee Bee. Today among our guests we have Chiara Bossard. Thank you, Chiara, for making that possible, that we can offer our guests coffee. Now we have a machine and capsules from Coffee Bee. And thank you to London Tea, because not everyone is coffee lover. And last but not least, I would like to say thank you to our team. Not everyone is here represented by the company, but there is Anna Spoller, who is doing our beautiful social media, but her superpower is artistic photography. Thank you to Marianne Hartley with her Hartley and Soul that offers soul-infused branding. Thank you for videography to Marcello Keller and his artifact, and thank you for photography to Dirk Wetzel. And I represent Ornamental Studio, who offers branding for free-spirited entrepreneurs. Okay, now, we were waiting long for this event. This is the last day of the DEAM Vibrant. The DEAM was chosen by San Antonio chapter and illustrated by Isabella Ann Castro. So feeling vibrant is about little things that bring us joy. But I would like to mention something bigger. Instead of 30-second pitch, I would like to invite you to the project Asphaltkunst on Rumelisplatz today. Is the opening at 6 p.m. And I invite in the name of Gregor Mandwiller and Gallery Eulerspiegel. He would like to invite our community to the opening, and project Asphaltkunst was called to life by Association the Verein at Rumelisplatz, Weber. I think that's the pronunciation. The concept was created by students from Schule für Gestaltung. So feel welcome to come today. And today, our speaker is Richard Harvell. Richard was born in New Hampshire in USA, where he studied English literature. Now he's living in Basel, and he's head of Berkeley Books at Helvetiq. And Richard will tell us why Helvetiq are creative and impactful contributors to the worldwide publishing, and where they promote Swiss and international authors. And I mentioned his book, The Bells, was translated to 15 languages. And he said once, reading and writing is the best way to keep us feel alive. I would like to learn more. Welcome, Richard.
Good morning. It's great to be here. I'm Richard Harvell, as she said. Thanks for the nice introduction. Really excited to talk to you today a bit about what we're doing at Helvetiq. Helvetiq is a small publisher founded in Lausanne, but it moved to Basel in 2015. And I think in the last 2 years, we've transformed the company in a way that we're doing something completely different than any other publisher in Switzerland. It's really something that's never been done before in Switzerland. I'm excited to tell you a bit about that. Before I do, I'd like to tell you a bit about how I ended up here. Last week, I think it was Thursday or maybe on Friday, Ava, an old friend, called me, picked up the phone, and I said, I only have 2 minutes, I've got a meeting started, I'm just about to start a Zoom call. Is it a quick question? She says, yes, it's a quick question. Can you talk at Creative Mornings next Friday? And she said, just talk about books. And I thought, really, books are my entire life. I'm a writer. I get up early in the day. I write. I work for a publisher all day long. In the evening, my favorite thing to do is to read. On the weekends, I read. On vacation, I read. Really, it's what I care about. It's what I spend my whole life with. I thought, oh, no problem. Just tell me when it is. It worked out. I said yes, went back to my call. And then I got the email from her, said, oh, it just needs to be based on this illustration. And my first thought was, oh, I can't just wing it. I actually have to think about this a little bit. And I looked at the illustration, and actually I discovered a couple of things that made me really happy. The first is the obvious one. The object that appears most in this picture are books. Not a surprise. I think a lot of us fill our houses. It's the object a lot of us own more of. We own more books than anything else. That's the first thing I noticed. And then I noticed something else that I think is even more interesting, which is there's really, if you imagine someone who came from 200 years ago and they came to the scene, there's only one object in this room that would be totally unknown to them. I think that's the record player. And the record player, of course, would play music that potentially they would know. So there's really nothing, there's nothing in this room that is totally, that is a technology that is really new, that is this world. We always talk all about this technology that's changing the world, but in a lot of ways we don't talk very often about how the technology of creativity and the technology of consuming creativity really hasn't changed a lot in the last couple hundred years. Of course, amazing pigments, it was impossible to make a mirror like that a couple hundred years ago, but really, the way we enjoy our time in a lot of ways hasn't changed, even though a lot of us spend so much time on social media and our phones. This is a familiar scene to a lot of us. A lot of us dream of a scene like this, and I think people dreamed of a scene like this 200 years ago as well. And that's actually what I really want to talk to you about, that for me, books are a really important kind of technology. We often don't think about books as a technology, but I do in my daily life. Making books at Helvetiq, we're constantly thinking about how we can use this technology to save money, to produce more, to do more books, to make our readers happier. So I think books really are a technology. And so what I want to do quickly is start the morning with a quick test. If we're going to talk about books as a technology, we need to know what a book is. I want to see if you can recognize a book. So it's a quick test, questions for you. All you have to do is say, yes, it's a book, or no, it's not a book. Okay, you ready? Here's the first one. If you didn't get this one, you're really in trouble. This is an otter. This is not a book. Okay, now it gets a little harder. Who thinks this is a book? Most of you say that this is not a book. This is a scroll. This is the Dead Sea Scrolls, 3rd century BC. This is, you can see, it was all connected. This was before, we often picture scrolls like this, but actually it's not true. That you can already see there's pages, but actually it was all bound together. The technology of a book really didn't exist at this point. Then we move on to this one. Is it a book?
Yes.
Definitely not. This is a wax tablet. I think if I was going to pitch this today, I would say that it's the Snapchat for Caesars. You could just put it in the oven, melt it down, your message totally disappears. This was a way that you could write something down, pass it on to someone else. You didn't need the technology of printing. You didn't need the technology of the way that you could use it again and again. This one, book. Still wrong. This is technically not a book. This is technically a codex. 13th century, a codex is simple. It's when you take a page and then fold it, and then you take another one like that and you bind them all together. But at the end of the day, they're just all these 4-page, often not paper, often vellum. This one is the Devil's Codex from the Czech Republic. And the interesting thing about this is it has a legend that the person whose job was to copy it was so sick of copying that he made a deal with the devil, so the devil wrote it for him in one night. So you can understand the people who were working with this technology hated it so much that they wanted to make a deal with the devil just so they didn't have to do this work. Really not a great technology. Well, of course, a great technology at the time, but not what we know as book. Okay, now, books. Am I still tricking you? This is the Gutenberg Bible, really considered the first modern book in Europe. Some people in Korea think that they had books before this, but certainly in Europe, first modern book printed on these old wine presses. Movable type, you could print it on large sheets of paper, fold up the book, cut the edges, and then you could print 100 at a time or 1,000 at a time. I think there was 1,000 copies of this printed. But this is when the modern book really starts, around 500 years ago. Last one. Book. This is a book. This book. Some point I lost the dust jacket. Do you see why I chose this one for this presentation? This is my book in the Japanese edition. So this other story of why I'm here today is that 10 years ago I wrote a book. I had an event about this many people interviewed about my book by a woman named Diane Dix, who used to run a bookstore here in Basel. The simplified version is after the event, she said, "I'm retiring, do you want to run a publisher?" And I said, "No way, I do not want to run a publisher. I want to be an author. I don't want to work in publishing." My no didn't work. She managed to twist my no into a yes somehow. And still 10 years later, I'm still working in publishing, though actually last week I gave up my role as publisher of Berkeley Books, still at Helvetiq, because as I'm going to tell you, we started doing new things at Helvetiq, and it really needed my time. So yeah, this is basically a book very much like Gutenberg. I think they print this, I would guess, 32 pages on one sheet, and then they fold it up. You can see they didn't cut the top. You can see it's really smooth on these two sides, and they didn't cut. It's not an accident. They did it because they wanted you to think this is handmade, and they wanted to sort of connect you to this old culture of bookmaking. So what I want to say to you is I really think a book is actually a technology for storing data and then also presenting data. And actually I think it's the best, or at least the most low-cost technology that we have. It was true 500 years ago, and it's still true today. That if you wanted to get a message that's about a book-length message, whether it's photos or illustrations or a story, and you want to send it out to 1,000 people all around the world, you don't know what technology they have, you don't know if they have phones, this is still the best way to do it. And it's amazingly inexpensive. For a book we can produce for $1 or $2 for a copy. You can send them around the world, and then we all know the joys of consuming a book. That it's amazing that it beats all of these, lost my clicker. It beats all these other kind of presentations. Of course, people just used to store things in their head, and then they used to pass it around. They used to then have to recite the message. That would be a way I could have written a novel. I could have just memorized it and told you all. There's the option of just putting it all on Post-it notes. We all know this kind of situation. If you don't have good bookbinding, this is what you end up with. And of course, the modern options work, but the modern options, we all know the problems with those. First of all, you need the technology to work. You need people to have the right technology on the other end. So that's really how I see publishing, very much as our job is to take this data, this message that some creative person is trying to, that has produced, somehow fit it into this technology of a book, and then it's our job to do it in such a way that the world wants it, that the world wants to pay for it, that people want to find it, they want to go to libraries and find it, they want to give it to each other, they want to tell their friends about it. I go to Frankfurt every year. I don't know if anyone's ever been to the Frankfurt Book Fair. This is one of about 8 halls that all look like this. Each of these are separate publishers. And I really love to go to, I'm a real snobby reader, but as far as a publisher, I'm not snobby at all. I love to hear how people have figured out to use this technology of bookmaking to excite people. So you see, like, books made that look like stuffed animals, books that have glitter on them, books that have the buttons you can push and they make songs. There's all kinds of ways that people have used this technology. And you can see them all in Frankfurt. It's really fun. I find the stands for the books that I most like to read are the most boring stands to visit, because they just look, you can't really sit down and read a book when you're there. They're not doing anything new. The stuff that's happening new are in these little stands that are brightly colored, and it's fun to do that with these small European publishers. Good. So now I'm coming to what Helvetiq is doing and how we're doing that a little bit differently. We realized there was a problem here in Switzerland several years ago. And the problem is that Switzerland's publishing industry is very much focused on Switzerland. It's not just because that's all the publishers think about. It's certainly not because the creatives only think about that. It really was a technological problem. That the way that Swiss publishers were designing books, the way they were packaging this message, was not able to reach the world. It wasn't in the right places, it wasn't in the right languages, it was often far too expensive. In Switzerland, people are happy to pay $40, $50, $60 for a book, but if you try to get someone in France or Germany to pay that price, they won't even take it into the bookstore. So a lot of Swiss publishers were making the wrong decisions. And it really was a problem, because it meant Switzerland is a place with so much creativity. There's so many great illustrators, there's so many great designers, there's so many great authors, and they didn't have any way to reach the rest of the world. Now in the last 2 years, we've realized this is really not just a problem for Switzerland. This is actually a problem for lots of countries. And we've started working with people in Poland and Scandinavia. My CEO, Hadi, is from Algeria, and he sees this problem in Africa. Africa is really completely locked out of the world publishing conversation. You basically have to have moved to New York if you want to get your book published. There's some great publishers in Africa, but they have the same problem. Publishing is so much dominated by companies that have mastered the technology of books that it's impossible for this creativity in other countries to reach the world market. So we asked ourselves, how can we fix that? And our solution was to do everything, to do really the creative work here from Basel. We're a team of about 20 people spread over Basel, Lausanne. We have someone in Amsterdam and someone in northern France. But the creative work happens there, the work with the authors, choosing the titles, the design work. Sometimes we work with external designers, sometimes with people in our team, deciding how we're going to master this technology of the book. And then after that, we work with people on the ground in the US. We decided that that's the best place to access this market. They have amazing logistical solutions in the US. Vast warehouses, huge distributors who were happy to work with us, by the way. It was really interesting that we basically went to them, and our revenue was a tiny fraction of what a tiny publisher in the US has. But we were able to excite them with the design, with our ideas. So we ended up with great partners in the US. And in September 2022, we started publishing books directly into the US. So now we're one imprint, we're one company, Helvetiq, but we publish books in French, German, and English. thought I can tell you about a few of these books so you understand how we're doing it. We decided to start in 2 categories that have worked for us here and we feel like we know what we're doing. That's children's nonfiction and what we call lifestyle books, which is basically experience books. So books that offer you some kind of experience. Hiking books, cooking books, running books. The idea that we can start there and then we can move on to other books later. This was our first book we published in the US, and it won Junior Library Guild Award, which has really got a lot of people's attention that we were basically, with our first book, we're able to win an award. This is a good example. It was actually done with a Polish illustrator who'd worked with us as a freelancer a lot before, who's sort of part of the team, and we thought she'd be a great person for this book. And Caroline is a Swiss journalist. And it's about the campaign for women's rights all around the globe. We've learned that one way to access so many publishers, American publishers, British publishers, tell these stories from their own perspective. And so we've realized it works for us if we try to tell a global story that still embraces diversity. So this book focuses on a lot of women who did some extraordinary things all over the world, who maybe have never appeared in a book on an American library shelf before. This is a fun book that was a Basel illustrator. Michael Meister is from Basel. And they had this idea to write a book about all the professions that have died, that no one does anymore, because exactly understanding why professions disappear helps us understand why professions are being created all the time. So, and this book has done really well in Germany, which is interesting. That's the best book we've ever sold in Germany, which I think the Germans love to talk about work and understanding how work is developed. It was really, it struck a note in Germany. Our beer hiking series has the most legs of any series. This is definitely in our lifestyle. You all know the ballad of a good pitch. That basically hikes to and from microbreweries. It's simple as that. And it's done well. We've now done it in here. We have 16 books published. I think this is old, and now we're up to 22. We've done them all around the world. We've done Whiskey Walk Scotland. Beer Biking Belgium just came out as well. And our best-selling book the last month is Beer Hiking Chicago, which has been really interesting to us. I actually thought it was a mistake. I was responsible for it, but as often happens in publishing, I was responsible for it, and then I realized it was a mistake. I thought it was too small. I thought we should have done the Great Lakes, because people like to think about it. But it turned out that Chicagoans are very serious about their own community, and it's a very clear community. This Chicago focuses on these neighborhoods, some historic walks, and it's been our best, as I said, our best-selling book of the last month. Started better than any of our other beer hiking books. So it's been really fun. So I'm constantly on the lookout for people in different regions who want to take on one of these projects. We look for people who like hiking and beer and can write, which is a big challenge. What else do I have for you? The Great Turkey Walk. This is a good example. This was a book that was written in the US, Catherine Carr in the 90s. A really wonderful novel for kids 8 to 12, then almost completely forgotten. And then Leonie Bischoff is a Swiss illustrator, came along and she did a graphic novel adaptation of this original novel. And then she took it to the Angoulême International Comics Festival last year, which is the most important comics festival in the world in France, and it won the grand prize there because she's such an amazing storyteller. She has this ability. It's a great book originally, but then Leonie has this talent for changing perspectives inside the book. This is sort of an example of suddenly you're flying above. You're sort of like a turkey experiencing this walk. It's a story of a boy who borrows his teacher's life savings to buy 1,000 turkeys in Missouri and then drive them to Denver. So he's driving these 1,000 turkeys across the country, and it inverts all of these ideas of the Western, go it alone, be a real man. It's sort of the opposite of all those. You need friends, you need to discover yourself. It's really a wonderful story. This is an example, this is sort of the best example of what we're trying to do. Michel Mayer is a Nobel Prize laureate at the University in Geneva. And he doesn't have time to write a children's book. There's no way. But Herji is a really talented Genevan illustrator, and he thought, I would love to be able to understand astrophysics, but I don't. So he teamed up with Jeremy Francfort, who was one of Michel Meyer's graduate students. They worked on this. Michel Meyer is this guy with the beard on the upper right. He's sort of the main character going through explaining how astrophysics work. And then Michel Meyer was involved in it. He wrote the foreword, and he helped us. Of course, he was a real big help in the marketing of the book. So this is basically 3 extremely talented Swiss-based people, extremely creative, who never would have had any access to books, or to the world publishing industry. And we found a way to help them package it. And now we've sold this into, there's a Chinese edition, there's a Turkish edition, there's, and then of course we've done really well with it in the US. It just won the Bank Street, I gotta remember what it's called, it's on the Bank Street book list as one of the best books for kids this year. This was our best-selling children's book last year, Smash the Patriarchy. It's about all the stupid things that men have said throughout history, and about the women, which was and the women who have worked to subvert that patriarchy. This is a good example. The book was called "The Patriarchy is Falling" until about 6 months before it was going out, and then we were in a meeting with our US sales team, and Jim, this sort of mid-50s, very wise old person from publishing, says, you gotta call it Smash the Patriarchy. And that decision made such a difference, that just that small title change gets so much attention to the book. It just won again, I wish they would have shorter names for these prizes. The International Library Initiative's Translated Children's Prize. So basically, librarians around the world are choosing the best books for kids that have been translated, and this is the one that they chose. This was a project with a Scandinavian publisher. So we really have realized that as much as we are committed to finding Swiss creatives, we really think there's also people all around the world who have the same problem, who need to access this world, publishing world. Getting near the end, this is going to be our first adult graphic novel. This is not for kids. Certainly one of our challenges is to have beer, children, and then a book like this all on the same shelf. And we're constantly thinking about how do we need to redefine our brand so it can either fit them or split it up. This is a project with the Louvre, and Futuropoulos is a French publisher, and the Louvre chose illustrators. This is Zelba, who was a German illustrator, and gave them free rein inside the Louvre. They wouldn't have to deal with any copyright issues. Normally, it's a nightmare if you want to do a book in a museum, because you need to ask for the rights for every painting. But they said, you can use any painting you want, you can write any story, we won't have any oversight, it's up to you. And so she wrote this wonderful story, basically, where people who are invited into the Louvre have to take off their clothes because, as you know, there's so many naked bodies in the Louvre. And then it talks about how art has dealt with these museum bodies through centuries. And so it's sort of a history of the naked body in art with a very funny story. That's the end of my books. I thought I'd show one more author. I think that the message that I'd like to give to you today is that we really believe in this technology of books, that we really, books have managed to abide not only for these last 500 years, but through this last 20 years when so many other technologies have been rendered obsolete. Books, every year they somehow, there's such an amazing technology that they're still here, and they're going to be here for another 500 years. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think it's really important that we find a way in Switzerland to be part of this global publishing conversation. And so that's what we're trying to do at Helvetiq. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions? Maria?
Yes, I've seen you also got games at Helvetiq, and they're fantastic. I think I've got the IQ of London, the music IQ and things like this.
Right.
When did you start creating, or why or when did you start creating these games?
So actually, Helvetiq started with games first. The creation story is that Hadi was studying for his Swiss citizenship test, and he couldn't find any good resources, and he thought, I'm going to make a game out of all these questions. Made a game, just like so many publishers didn't really think through the technology of production or how to distribute and sell, and then somehow managed to do it just from grit and nerves, and managed to sell this first game, which went on to sell 20 or 30,000 copies, which has been a great success. But Hadi also has always been a book lover, and so then he expanded into books soon after. And books and games, I think the creativity of making a good book is very similar to the creativity of making a good game. I think at Helvetiq, we really put the readers first, or the game players first. We're not trying to do this for prestige. We're not trying to do this to impress someone we're asking for hundreds of thousands of francs. We're really trying to make this experience of reading and this experience of playing as valuable as possible.
Do you feel as a publisher that book writing has been democratized enough for authors to gain access to the market?
Definitely not. Everyone actually thought that the ebook was going to do that suddenly there'd be, you wouldn't have to have this technology of books. You could basically, for no cost, you could produce a book. Everyone can get out there. There are so many gatekeepers in publishing, particularly in the US, in the UK, which drives a lot of the world's publishing conversation, because publishers all around the world speak English, so if they're going to license a book, they often want to see it in English first. So I definitely don't think that's true, but I do think that publishers have done a much better job in looking for diverse voices in the last few years. But I think that it's extremely difficult. I was speaking to a friend who's an Italian journalist last week who has a great idea for a novel. It's really hard. I mean, for him to reach, as an Italian speaker, he could write an amazing novel, and really to reach the world is a real challenge.
I think that you're always searching for new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about the idea of augmented reality, which a lot of people are now using for the books too?
Yeah, so I went to an event called Future Book in London in 2016. I think it was the first time I saw augmented reality books. And I think that they kind of came and went in a lot of ways. And I think they basically, they had like, I remember it was the Lego book, and you could have your iPad, and if you shine the iPad at the book, you would see the Lego creatures rise up out of. And the experience is that basically a few years later, I heard another presentation at the same event, and they said the problem is the kids then very quickly just are on the iPad. They push the book away because the iPad can offer so many other. So actually, I think in a lot of ways, shielding books from technology is the best way to protect them. With the exception, I think that academics, I think books have a lot to teach technology about the way. Here's an example. We notice when we find a mistake in a book, we're very quick to fix it in the print edition for the next reprinting, because we don't want to print the book with mistakes. But we almost never fix it in the ebook, which would cost us very little work, could cost no money, because we always think about it's just a digital file. It's not, we're not going to print 5,000 copies of it. Who cares if there's a few of them that are wrong? So I actually think the permanence of a book causes us to be more serious about the production of them, and I think that's an important lesson that we have to teach technology. So I'm not against augmented reality, but no one's convinced me that it's going to work yet.
I was wondering, how do you get to the ideas? Is it people coming up to you, or is it just all creative?
Yeah, that's definitely not just in our team. We're constantly looking out for new ideas. We're going to fairs to meet with publishers, to meet with illustrators, to meet with authors. We get a lot of submissions. We get a lot of submissions that then we later turn down, but we like the person who submitted them. We find it so important to work with people we like, because these are 2-3 year projects, and if it's someone that we don't like, then it's going to be, yeah. So we really do judge based on the person a lot of the time. We're looking for someone who's able to pitch their idea early on. I mean, we publishing is refining this pitch again and again, and so if someone comes with a pitch at the beginning and we see we can make something out of that, then that excites us. But yeah, I should say we're constantly looking for new ideas. If anyone in this room happens to have an idea, we take creative@Helvetiq is our email address. We read it every day. We look for, basically what happens is ideas come in there, and then we take them to our editorial meeting every 2 weeks, and we see which ones of them we can follow, which ones have this sort of, this seed of hope that's a person we really like, an idea we really like, a strategy we could really imagine, and then we sort of decide what to follow. A lot of publishers have the luxury of just waiting for great ideas that are finished. They're agented. For example, in my own writing career, I work with an agent first, and then the agent gets the book finished and then pitches the book to the publishers. The publishers then just take it right at the end. There's very little development. That's how a lot of publishers work. We don't have the luxury of that, but I also think our job would be less fun if we did have that luxury.
Do you use yourself ebooks, and maybe then related to the books you showed, is there a way to translate these books into ebooks, or you don't want to do that because you want to separate?
Great question. So first, I've got to admit, I only read digitally now.
Okay.
I never read books, which you think what, this guy just told us how wonderful books are. I don't think there's actually a contradiction there. I love books. I love the story, and the kind of books that I read, novels, it's a way to, I can transport it. It's not heavy when I'm reading it in bed, and it's a way that I can also get any book I want at any time. I love reading on, I read a 1,000-page Dickens novel on my phone last year. There was basically, it must have been, I don't know, 100,000 clicks before. I think the technology of creating a book makes you make decisions, but then I'm not against it being in digital form after that. I really have nothing against. Our books are so imprinted by design choices and by illustrations. It's really hard to turn into ebooks. We had a running book that did really well in ebook last year, and we've tried the one that I said smashed the patriarchy. Because it's done so well, we decided to make an ebook because in the US, a lot of libraries that can't afford, in low-income areas, that can't afford large collections, now can buy into ebook collections. And so every time a student goes to the library and takes it out, I think we get 20 cents. It's a small amount, but it means that these students have access to it, and it is a small source of revenue because these libraries wouldn't be able to buy our books otherwise.
Okay. Maybe I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
What is your dream project?
My dream project as a publisher?
Yes.
My dream project. Well, I love working with, I'm really excited about this nonfiction graphic novel space, which is what Smash the Patriarchy was, what Big Bangs and Black Holes, because you need two kinds of great storytellers. You need the storyteller, someone who understands how to construct the argument, the story, the text, but you also need great visual storytellers. And then you also need a great theme. I think this is a great way to have, to excite people in very unique themes. We have someone who pitched one last week that I'm excited about that is a history of the way people have changed their bodies, whether it's grooming or plastic surgery or cutting their hair or cutting your nails, sort of helping people understand how throughout all of history we've changed our bodies. And I think finding ways to then turn that into a visual language, but also into a text language and put them together. I really like working on projects like that. And also I really like projects that are global and individual at the same time. They speak to people all around the world, but then also embrace this diversity that highlights stories around the world, which is really, really a difficult thing to do.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Richard. It was great to have you here.
Thank you.
So this is our team, just to get familiar with new faces. And I have one last thing to inform you about, and then we can enjoy our coffee and cake. So on the 14th of June, we plan an extra event. It's not the usual lecture meet, but the guided tour to the exhibition that is organized by one of the hosts of Lausanne CreativeMornings chapter. And I would love to see you there. You will get a notification by newsletter, and you can sign up. If you don't get the space, the exhibition is there during the Art Basel week, so you can still visit it, and I think Monica will be there around and a way to help you. Thank you very much for today. Thank you.
Sure.